Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we have a tank of a keyboard that will literally let you play through anything. Tornado, hurricane, earthquake, whatever. This thing will pretty much withstand it all, although I highly recommend that if a natural disaster comes your way, that you get up and evacuate. So let's jump into the review. Alright, so today we have the Corsair K95 RGB Platinum XT. That's a mouthful, but this thing is huge. It's really good for gaming. I don't do too much gaming, but I can definitely see some of the benefits of a keyboard like this. Alright, so here it is. This thing is absolutely massive. It's probably the size of my torso. And especially with the attached wrist rest, it takes up a lot of space on your desk. But first, we'll be jumping into what do you get in the box. All right, so in the box, you get the keyboard itself, of course, the Corsair K95 RGB Platinum XT. From now on, I would just call it the K95. And you also get the plush wrist rest that comes with it, and you get a keycap puller and different textured and contoured keycaps for FPS and MOBA that are ABS plastic. And the reason I make that distinction is that all of the keycaps on the K95 actually are PBT double shot keycaps, which for me was mind-blowing to find out. So I'm actually really impressed with that part of this keyboard. So that's all that's in the box. Let's move on to the build quality. So like I said, this thing is built like a tank. It has a very thick aluminum, black anodized and brushed metal plate where you mount the switches on it. It's much thicker than some of the other keyboards that we've worked with in the past. Even their old K70 had a very thin aluminum top plate, but this one is really thick. In the back, you see that it has two horizontal kick-up stands. It only has one angle each, but it does raise the angle quite a bit. For me personally, I don't really use the kick-up stand, so I'm going to leave them down. It has four really massive rubber feet, so no slipping there, don't worry about that. And it also has this cross-shaped pattern for wire routing, and it has that because the keyboard has USB pass-through on the very back of the keyboard. And because it has USB pass-through, that means it needs two USB slots on your computer to work with it. And the cable is thick. It's a very, very thick, massive cable. It needs two USB slots to work. Not personally a favorite of mine that it has a non-detachable cable. But if you really want USB pass-through, whether you're connecting a card reader, your headset, a controller, charging your phone, things like that, that can all be done through the USB pass-through on the back. And then of course, if your headphones need to be routed through, you can use the X-shaped cable routing in the back to bring it from the back to the front towards you. And then on the side, you can see that it already has quite the angle to work with in the first place. You also see that it has a floating keycap design. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this because there's too much light. I'm not really a fan of seeing my switches. I'd rather have a case instead. But I think with the RGB effects of this keyboard and how it's targeted towards gamers, it actually really works for them. Also, you notice that the bottom case is entirely made out of plastic, where the only aluminum parts is a top plate. The wrist rest snaps right into some slots on the bottom of the case, and it fits in really well. It's easy to remove, but it's also easy to put on. And surprisingly, it's actually really comfortable. It acts more of a palm rest, which is actually perfect because it doesn't really interfere with the wrist and doesn't cause carpal tunnel, which is something that some other wrist rests really interfere with, especially since if you're resting your wrist on it instead of just the meaty areas of your palm. So this wrist rest is very comfortable. It's at a really good angle, and it's quite cushioning. So I'm actually really impressed with this wrist rest compared to the K70 that we did back in the day. Like that was just a piece of plastic, but this one actually has like a plush leatherette feeling to it that's sort of upscale, and it's nice to have on your desk. And it's easy to remove if you feel like it's taking up too much space or you don't need it. Okay, so let's look at the top. You can see that it has a really massive forehead with sort of really massive Corsair branding. I'm not a big fan of pretty much any obtrusive branding on a keyboard, but on the forehead you also see different features on it too. So you got a dedicated volume scroll wheel and a dedicated mute button. Mute buttons are really great if you're gaming or if you're listening to music with headphones on, someone wants to talk to you, just press that mute button, or you slide the volume down real quick and then slide it back up when you're done talking to someone. I actually really like the volume wheel. It doesn't click, it doesn't really make much sound, but with that you don't really like feel the different steps. It's sort of just like an infinite scroll. It also has dedicated media controls right above the numpad. And then on the left side, you see the different profile switching button. You have the brightness changing button, and then you have the Windows lock or gaming mode button. So you can switch between 5 different profiles. I have played with the software and it's actually pretty easy to use. Once you overwrite the profile on the keyboard, you can close the software and just uninstall it maybe, because the software is sort of bulky. It's actually a really big program and I don't like it on my computer because I only have so much space. But if you find that you have a lighting profile and you have macros and stuff that you're set with, then you don't really need the software. I personally don't really use macros, but I've edited a all white static profile for myself on the keyboard. So I'm pretty plain, I would say. And then the brightness levels, you got 4 levels. You got 0, 33%, 66%, and 100%. And then gaming mode, right now, it's set to just turn off the Windows key. But if you go into the software, you can change other things that it does, like take away Alt F4, take away Alt Tab, things like that. So anything that will cause you to leave your game or your window, it can disable that. So that's the forehead. I would have liked it if it was more compacted somehow, where the buttons weren't just added on top of the keyboard, because it's already a large keyboard, but you're making it even larger by adding all these things. Maybe a on the side volume scroll or something like that would be maybe in the future. Not sure, but that would be a good thing to try. Okay, and then the keycaps. The keycaps are actually what impresses me the most out of this keyboard, I would say, because Corsair has upgraded their ABS double shot keycaps to PBT double shot keycaps. So these display the RGB through quite nicely. The legends are pretty big. They are still targeted towards gamers, but they're not really stenographic or separated at all. So the letters are completed, but I would say the fonts of the modifiers and like things like backspace, enter, whatever, is a little bit too large, and they're all in caps, which just looks a little bit funky, and it's not my thing. But if you have a hard time seeing or you play a lot of games at night, these keycaps are very high contrast. The font is very big, very legible at night, very readable indeed. So, I mean, props to them for that. Alongside that, the keycap walls are 1.5 millimeters each, so really thick. And I mean, I have really no complaints about them. Adding PBT is really nice because they're more oil resistant, they're gonna last a longer time, they're not gonna shine as quickly. And then I do have a problem with the layout though, because the bottom row still is not a standard bottom row. You see that it just has some small keys and then some larger keys, and it's just a mess. And replacing those keycaps, although you may not want to because they're PBT, is still a pain to do so. So hopefully in the future, Corsair will upgrade to that standard bottom row like we've seen other big companies have been doing. So I really hope to see that in their future. And I think that would make the user experience a lot better, especially if they want to use other keycaps on their keyboard. Okay, and then of course we have to talk about the textured and contoured keys for FPS and MOBA. Now, those are ABS plastic because of the way that they're contoured. It's not really possible to make that PVT plastic. The same goes for the 6 macro keys on the far left of the keyboard. I guess I haven't talked about that at all, but the left side does have 6 macro keys that you can program to do whatever you want, open applications, do different functions, macros, things like that. You can program that, and it does have some Elgato Stream Deck software integration that you can do as well. I don't really have an Elgato Stream Deck, so I haven't done any of that, but it does come with 6 streaming keycaps that are blue that you can put on there for your streaming functions rather than your gaming functions. So if you're a streamer, you maybe think about getting something like this where it has 6 dedicated keys that can be used for changing up windows or doing some effects or sound things on your Stream Deck. And they are contoured, so what that means is if your fingers are on WASD, you can feel that they're slightly curved towards the place that your fingers rest to make it easier to know where each key is, or like to decrease the distance, or to make it better for your fingers to rest there without being in some awkward position. I find that they're pretty cool, except once you are done gaming and you switch back to typing, then it feels weird. If you type a lot and you game a little, then I would just keep the normal keycaps on there. If you game a lot and type a little, then it would make more sense to have the contoured keys on there. All right, the switches. Now there's 3 switch options. There's Cherry MX Blue, which are the old Cherry MX Blues, which have a 50 million key press lifespan, according to Cherry. And then it has Cherry MX Browns and Cherry MX Silver, which are the new updated switches that have the 100 million key press lifespan. So I guess what that means is just whether you press it once or you press it the 100th millionth time, it will feel the same regardless of how many times you pressed it in between. And then I got the Cherry MX Browns. I am gonna say that they feel a bit different than older Cherry MX Browns that I've used. They're sort of smoother and not as rough, not as sandy. The tactile bump is still pretty small. I know all of you guys, you don't really think MX Browns are tactile, but they do have a bump despite being really small. But I think my major problem here is that the switches are loose in the plate. Like there's quite a bit of switch top housing wobble, and on top of that you already have the bump. So all of that together makes it sound even more noisy and rattly. If you know what I mean, like the switches, they already move in the plate, but then there's a bump that makes it move even more. So now there's extra movement noise. So I think these switches can benefit from some filming, either that or the plate is too loose. Like there's something going on there where it's just not as tight as it should be. Okay, and then the stabilizers, they're still not a huge upgrade. I don't think they've done anything different with the stabilizers actually. They are Cherry style stabilizers that are plate mounted, and they're quite loose within the plate. So I think something that you can do if you want to make the sound a little bit better, I haven't tried it yet, but if you put some Band-Aid or electrical tape after just clipping up the part of the stabilizer that goes in the plate a little bit and putting that there, it might tighten it within the plate a little bit more and make it sound less loud. And then of course putting in some dielectric grease with an interdental brush or something could help as well. Again, I haven't tried it yet, but I tried it on other boards and that really helped. So hopefully that could help this board stabilizers a little bit more. But right out of the box, they are really loud, really rattly, and just sort of loose feeling. Like they're just not what I expect them to be, that's all. And then the macro keys are pretty useful. Like I've said before, you can do a lot with them. For me personally, I would probably just have them like open up YouTube Studio or like Blog Studio or things like that. But if you're gaming, you can probably put more macros and stuff in there that are actually useful. And then of course, if you're streaming, you can have them change scenes and change different effects that you put on your stream window. Okay, so the software is the iCue software. It's quite chunky. I'm not a big fan of how big it is, but it does do a lot. So inside it, there's already a bunch of different preset lighting effects that you can just toss on and then sync up to your keyboard. But on top of that, you can also remap each key. You can change the function of each key. You can launch applications. You can change it to do media things. And something that I forgot is that the forehead of the keyboard actually has this edge lighting on the very top, and you can customize each zone of that lighting as well. So it can match your keyboard or it can be something completely different. And I think that actually looks really cool. Rather than having entire perimeter lighting, just having the top edge there actually makes the forehead seem like it's useful and not as just taking up space. Like it's actually adding into the user experience. Of course, it has those buttons already, but it's still pretty much additional space, but now it looks better, so maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not. I think it's time for the typing test, so Typing Betty, take it away. All right, that was the typing test. It's exactly what you guys expected. It's what I expected. It's loud, it's loose, it's rattly. There's definitely some things that can be done to improve the sound and improve the overall user experience. But for what it is, it's definitely for gamers. It's not for me. It is a tank in size and build quality. And out of all of Corsair's past keyboards and stuff, I would say this one is probably one of the best. But in terms of price, this thing is not cheap at all. It is about $200. And for that price, I'm not sure if I would buy it, but I'm sure other people out there would. It has a lot of features that some other keyboards don't, like per key RGB lighting and like really dedicated software that's meant for macros and outputting text. And with the macros, you can like record mouse movement and the mouse distance of movement. So a lot of things there that I don't really see on other keyboards. And if you know that you need that, then maybe this is a keyboard to check out. But if you never used any of that before and you don't really know what that is or does, then maybe this keyboard is a little bit out of your price range. I'm not sure. It really depends on what you want out of a board. It's got USB pass-through. It's got a lot of nice lighting features, really durable, 100 million key presses. Like, I don't know anyone who is ever going to surpass 100 million key presses before they replace their keyboard. So it's a little bit crazy. But I really just do want them to upgrade that standard bottom row. Like, just do it. Like, it's not that hard. You just change the PCB, you just change the plate, and you just make it standard, and then everyone can have a more custom experience with changing the keycaps to what they want. And then of course, if they added hot swappability, that would be awesome too, but I don't really expect bigger companies to move towards that right now, even though they sort of should. It's definitely where the trend's heading. Hot swap plus big company, that would be nice. But maybe a lot of people don't really need that, so that might be just my own biases crowding my opinion. Anyways, out of all Corsair's old keyboards and whatnot, I think this is my favorite one. And if you're looking for a Corsair board that does all of this stuff, then yes, this thing is great. It's a tank, it's nice build quality. It definitely has some of its downsides too. And some of those are a little bit fixable and some of those really aren't unless you know how to desolder and then modify everything to your liking. Comment down below, would you have this keyboard on your desk? I mean, honestly, is your desk even big enough to have a keyboard of this size? I can say that my desk is really big, like really, really, really big, and this thing takes so much space. It just crowds everything. It's just not for me. If you want to see another full-size mechanical keyboard that has a bunch of different features, including hot swappability, check out this review here. And then if you're interested in a different full-size mechanical keyboard reviews, check out this playlist here and subscribe here if you want to. I'll see you in the next one.